Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. 9 November, Year of the Depend Adult Undergarment. Page 450. The Enfield Tennis Academy has an accredited capacity of 148 junior players, of whom 80 are to be male, but an actual fall YDAU population of 95 paying and 41 scholarship students, so 136, of which 72 are female right now for some reason, meaning that while there's room for 12 more, preferably full tuition junior players, there ought ideally to be fully 16 more males than there are, meaning Charles Tavis and Company are wanting to fill all 12 available spots with males. Plus, they wouldn't exactly mind, is the general scuttlebutt, if a half dozen or so of the better girls left before graduation and tried for the show, simply because housing more than 68 girls means putting some in male dorms, which creates tension and licensing and conservative parent problems, given that co-ed hall bathrooms are not a good idea. What with all the adolescent glands firing all over the place. It also means that since there are twice as many male prorectors as female, AM drills have to be completely staggered. The boys in 2 sets of 32, the girls in 3 sets of 24. Which creates problems in terms of early PM classes for the lowest-ranked C-Squad girls, who drill last. Matriculations, gender quotas, recruiting, financial aid, room assignments, mealtimes, rankings, class versus drill schedules, pro-rector hiring, accommodating changes in drill schedule consequent to a player's movement up or down a squad. It's all the sort of thing that's uninteresting, unless you're the one responsible, in which case it's cholesterol-raisingly stressful and complex. The stress of all the complexities and priorities to be triaged and then weighted against one another gets Charles Tavis out of bed in the headmaster's house at an ungodly hour most mornings, his sleep-swollen face twitching with permutations. He stands in leather slippers at the living room of A-team players, assembling stiffly in the gray glow, carrying gear with their heads down and some still asleep on their feet, the first bit of snout of the sun protruding through the city's little skyline far beyond them, the aluminum glints of river and sea east. Tavis's hands work nervously around the cup of hazelnut decaf that steams upward into his face as he holds it, hair unarranged and one side hanging, high forehead up against the window's glass, so he can feel the mean chill of dawn just outside. His lips moving slightly and without sound. The thing it's not entirely impossible he may have fathered asleep, up next to the sound system, with its claws on its chest and 4 pillows for bradypnea-afflicted breathing. That sounds like soft repetitions of the words sky or ski, making no unnecessary sound, not eager to wake it, and have to interface with it, and have it look up at him with a terrible calm and accepting knowledge it's quite possible is nothing but Tavis's imagination. So lips moving without sound but breath and cup steam spreading on the glass, and little icicles from the rainy melt of yesterday's snow hanging from the anodized gutters just above the window, and seen by Tavis as a distant skyline upside down. In the lightening sky, the same 2 or 3 clouds seem to move back and forth like sentries. The heat comes on with a distant whoom, and the glass against his forehead trembles slightly. A hiss of low static from the speaker. It had fallen into sleep without turning off. The A-team's array keeps shifting and melding as they await Schtitt. Permutations of complications. Tavis watches the boys stretch and confer and sips from the cup with both hands. The concerns of the day assembling themselves in a sort of tree diagram of worry. Charles Tavis knows what James Incandenza could not have cared about less. The key to the successful administration of a top-level junior tennis academy lies in cultivating a kind of reverse Buddhism, a state of total worry. So, the best ETA players' special perk is they get hauled out of bed at dawn, still crusty-eyed and pale with sleep, to drill in the first shift. Dawn drills are, of course, al fresco, until they erect and inflate the lung, which Hal Incandenza hopes is soon. His circulation is poor because of tobacco and/or marijuana, and even with his Dunlop down both legs, sweatpants, and a turtleneck, and thick old white alpaca tennis jacket that had been his father's and has to be rolled up at the sleeves, he's sullen and chilled. Hal is, and by the time they've run the pre-stretch sprints up and down the ETA hill 4 times, swinging their sticks madly in all directions, and, at Adelaide's dictate, making various half-hearted warrior noises, Hal is both chilled and wet, and his sneakers squelch from dew as he hops in place and looks at his breath, wincing as the cold air hits the one bad tooth. By the time they're all stretching out, lined up in rows along the service and baselines, flexing and bowing, genuflecting to nothing, changing postures at the sound of a whistle, by this time, the sky has lightened to the color of kaopectate. The ATHSCME fans are idle, and the ETAs can hear birds. Smoke from the stacks of the Sunstrand complex is weakly sunlit as it hangs in plumes, completely still, as if painted on the air. Tiny cries and a repetitive scream for help come up from someplace downhill to the east, presumably Enfield Marine. This is the one time of day that Charles doesn't look bright blue. The Pines' birds don't sound any happier than the players. The grounds' non-pines are bare and canted at circuitous hillside angles, all up and down the hill when they sprint again, 4 more times, then on bad days another 4, maybe the most hated part of the day's conditioning. Somebody always throws up a little. It's like the drill's reveille. The river at dawn is a strip of foil's dull side. Kyle Coyle keeps saying it's co-wo-wold. All the lesser players are still abed. Today, there's multiple retching. From last night's sweets, Hal's breath hangs before his face until he moves through it. Sprints produce the sick sound of much squelching. Everyone wishes the hill's grass would die. 24 girls are drilled in groups of 6 on 4 of the center courts. The 32 boys, minus, rather ominously, J.J. Penn, are split by rough age into 4s and take a semi-staggered 8 of the east courts. Schtitt is up in his little observational crow's nest, a sort of apse at the end of the iron transom players call the tower, that extends west to east over the centers of all 3 sets of courts and terminates with the nest high above the show courts. He has a chair and an ashtray up there. Sometimes from the courts you can see him leaning over the railing, tapping the edge of the bullhorn with his weatherman's pointer. From the west and center courts, the rising sun behind him gives his white head a pinkish corona. When he's seated, you just see misshapen smoke rings coming up out of the nest and moving off with the wind. The sound of the bullhorn is scarier when you can't see him. The waffled iron stairs leading up to the transom are west of the west courts, all the way across from the nest, so sometimes Schtitt paces back and forth along the transom with his pointer behind his back, his boots ringing out on the iron. Schtitt seems immune to all weather and always dresses the same for drills, the warm-ups and boots. When the ETA strokes or plays being filmed for study, Mario in Candenza is positioned on the railing of Schtitt's nest, leaning way out and filming down, his police lock protruding into empty air with somebody beefy assigned to stand behind him and grip the back of the Velcro vest. It always scares hell out of Hal, because you can never see Dunkel or Nwangi behind Mario, and it always looks like he's leaning way out to dive, bowlegs first, down, onto Court 7's net. Except during periods of disciplinary conditioning, al fresco AM drills work like this. A prorector is at each relevant court with 2 yellow ball hopper brand baskets of used balls, plus a ball machine, which machine looks like an open footlocker with a blunt muzzle at one end pointed across the net at a quartet of boys and connected by long orange industrial cords to a 3-prong outdoor outlet at the base of each light pole. Some of the light poles cast long, thin shadows across the courts as soon as the sun is strong enough for there to be shadows. In summertime, players try to sort of huddle in the thin lines of shade. Ortho Steese keeps yawning and shivering. John Wayne wears a small, cold smile. Hal hops up and down in his capacious jacket and plum turtleneck, and looks at his breath and tries a la Lyle to focus very intently on the pain of his tooth without judging it as bad or good. K.D. Coyle, out of the infirmary after the weekend, opines that he doesn't see why the better player's reward for hard slogging to the upper rungs is dawn drills, while, for instance, Pemulis and the Weichmeister et al. Are still horizontal and sawing logs. Coyle says this every morning. Steese tells him he's surprised at how little they've missed him. Coyle is from the small Tucson, Arizona suburb of Arithema, and claims to have thin desert blood and special sensitivity to the wet chill of Boston's dawn. The Whataburger Jr. Invitational is a sort of double-edged Thanksgiving homecoming for Coyle, who at 13 was lured from Tucson's own Rancho Vista Golf and Tennis Academy by promises of self-transcendence from Schtitt. Drills work like this: 8 different emphases on 8 different courts. Each quartet starts at a different court and rotates around. The top 4 traditionally start drills on the first court, backhands down the line. 2 boys to a side. Corbett Thorpe lays down squares of electrician's tape at the court's corners, and they are strongly encouraged to hit the balls into the little squares. Hal hits with Steese, Coyle with Wayne. Axer's been sent down with Shaw and Struck for some reason. Second court, 4 hands, same deal. Steese consistently misses the square and gets a low pH rejoiner from Tex Watson, hatless and pattern balding, at 27. Hal's tooth hurts, and his ankle is stiff, and the cold balls come off his strings with a dead sound like chung. Tiny bratwursts of smoke ascend rhythmically from Schtitt's little nest. Third court is butterflies, a complex VAPS deal where Hal hits a backhand down the line to Steese, while Coyle forehands it to Wayne, and then Wayne and Steese cross-court the balls back to Hal and Coyle, who have to switch sides without bashing into each other and hit back down the line, now to Wayne and Steese, respectively. Wayne and Hal amuse themselves by making their cross-court balls collide on every fifth exchange or so. This is known around ETA as atom smashing, and is understandably hard to do. And the collided balls sprang wildly out onto the other practice courts, and Rick Dunkel is less amused than Wayne and Hal are. So, nicely warm now and arms singing, they're shunted quickly onto the fourth court. Volleys for depth, then for angle, then lobs and overheads, which latter drill can be converted into a disciplinary puker if a pro-rector's feeding you the lobs. The overhead drill's called tap and whack. Hal pedals back, terribly ankle-conscious, jumps, kicks out, nails Steese lob, then has to sprint up and tap the net's tape with his Dunlop's head as Steese lops deep again, and now has to backpedal again and jump and kick and hit it, and so on. Then Hal and Coyle, both sucking wind after 20 and trying to stand up straight, feed lobs to Wayne and Steese, neither of whom is fatigable as far as anyone can tell. You have to kick out on overheads to keep your balance in the air. Overhead, Schtitt uses an unamplified bullhorn and careful enunciation to call out for everyone to hear that Mr. Revenant, Hal Encandenza, was letting the ball get the little much behind him on overheads. Fears of the ankle, maybe. Hal raises his stick in acknowledgement without looking up. To hang in past age 14 here is to become immune to humiliation from staff. Coyle tells Hal between the lobs they send up he'd love to see Schtitt have to do 20 tap and whacks in a row. They're all flushed to a shine, all chill washed off, noses running freely and heads squeaking with blood. The sun well above the sea's dull glint and starting to melt the frozen slush from I-day's snow and rain that night custodians had swept into little wedged lines up against the lengthwise fences, which grimy wedges are now starting to melt and run. There's still no movement in the Sunstrand stack's plumes. The watching pro-rectors stand easy with their legs apart and their arms crossed over their rackets' faces. The same 3 or 4 booger-shaped clouds seem to pass back and forth overhead, and when they cover the sun, people's breath reappears. Steese blows on his racket hand and cries out thinly for the inflation of the lung. Mr. A. F. DeLint ranges behind the fence with his clipboard and whistle, blowing his nose. The girls behind him are too bundled up to be worth watching, their hair rubber-banded into little bouncing tails. Fifth court. Serves to both corners of both boxes, catching each other's serves and serving them back. First serve, second serve, slice serves, shank serves, and back-snapping American twist serves that Steese begs off of, telling the pro-rector, Neil Hartigan, who's 2 meters tall and of so few words everybody fears him by default. He's having lower spasms from a mispositioned bed. Then Coyle, he of the weak bladder and suspicious discharge, gets excused to go back into the eastern tree line out of sight of the distaffs and pee. So the other 3 get a minute to jog over to the pavilion and stand with their hands on their hips and breathe and drink Gatorade out of little conic paper cups you can't put down till they're empty. The way you flush out a cottony mouth between drills is you take a mouthful of Gatorade and puff out your cheeks to make a globe of liquid that you mangle with your teeth and tongue, then lean out and spit out into the grass and take another drink for real. The sixth court is returns of serve down the line, down the center, cross court for depth, then for placement, then for deep placement, with more taped squares, then chipped center and cross returns against the server who follows his serve to the net. The server practices half volleys off the chips, although Wayne and Steese are so fast that they're on top of the net by the time the return gets to them, and they can volley away at chest height. Wayne drills with the casual economy of somebody who's in about second gear. The urns dispenser's cups can't stand up. Their bottoms are pointy, and they'll spill any liquid still in them, is why you have to empty them. Between squads, Hard's guys will sweep the pavilion of dozens of cones. Then, blessedly, on the seventh court, physically undemanding finesse drills, drops for angles, topspin lobs, extreme angles, drops for extreme angles, then restful micro-tennis. Tennis inside the service lines, very soft and precise. Radical angles much encouraged. Touch and artistry-wise, nobody comes close to Hal in micro-tennis. By this time, Hal's turtleneck is soaked through under the alpaca jacket, and exchanging it for a sweatshirt out of the gear bag is a kind of renewal. What wind there is down here is out of the south. The temperature is now probably in the low 10s centigrade. The sun's been up an hour, and you can almost see the light pole and transom shadows, rotating slowly, northwest. The sun strand stacks plumes stand there, cigarette straight, not even seeming to spread at the top. The sky is going a glassy blue. No tennis balls required on the final court. Wind sprints. Probably the less said about wind sprints, the better. Then, more Gatorade, which Hal and Coyle are breathing too hard to enjoy, as Schtitt comes slowly down from the transoms. It takes a while. You can hear his steel-toed boots hit each iron step. There's something creepy about a very fit older man, to say nothing of jackboots with Fila warm-ups of claret-colored silk. He's coming this way, both hands behind his back, and the pointer poking out to the side. Schtitt's crew cut and face are nacrous as he moves east in the yellowing AM light. This is sort of the signal for all the quartets to gather at the show courts. Behind them, the girls are still hitting ground strokes in Baroque combinations, much high-pitched grunting and the lifeless chung of cold-hit balls. 3/14s are made to squeegee the more extrusive melt, back, into the little banks of frozen leaves along the fence. At the horizon to the north, a bulbous cone of picric clouds that gets taller by the hour at the Methuen-Andover border's mammoth effectuators force northern MA's combined oxides north, against some sort of upper air resistance, it looks like. You can see little bits of glitter from broken monitor glass in the frozen stuff up by the fences between 6 through 9, and 1 or 2 curved shards of floppy disk. And they're a troubling sight. Penn being absent amid troubling leg rumors. Postlewaite with 2 black eyes and his nose covered with horizontal bandages that are starting to loosen and curl at the edges from sweat, and Otis P. Lord alleged to have come back from the emergency room at St. Elizabeth's last night with the Hitachi monitor over his head still, its removal with all the sharp teeth of the broken screen's glass pointing at key parts of Lord's throat, apparently calling for the sort of esoteric expertise you have to fly in by private medical jet, according to Axford. They all get on the outside of 3 cones of Gatorade, bent or squatting, sucking wind, while Schtitt stands at a sort of parade rest with his weatherman's pointer behind his back and shares overall impressions with the players on the morning's work thus far. Certain players are singled out for special mention or humiliation. Then, more wind sprints, Then a brief, strategy clinic thing from Corbett Thorpe on how approach shots down the line aren't always the very best tactic and why. Thorpe's a first-rate tennis mind, but his terrible stutter makes the boys so uncomfortable they have a hard time listening. The whole first shifts on the 8th court for the final conditioning drills. First are star drills. A dozen plus boys on either side of the net, behind the baselines. Form a line. Go one at a time. Go run up the sideline, touch the net with your stick, then backwards to the outside corner of the service box, and then forward to touch the net again. Backward to the middle of the service box, forward to touch net, back to the baseline's little jut of center line, up to net. Service box's other outside corner, net. Baseline's corner, net. Then turn and run like hell for the corner you started from. Schtitt has a stopwatch. There's a janitorial bucket placed in the doubles alley by the finish point for potential distress. They each do the star drill 3 times. Hal has 41 seconds and 38 and 48, which is average both for him and for any 17-year-old, with a resting pulse rate in the high 50s. John Wayne's low of 33 occurs on his 3rd star, and he stops dead at the finish point, and always just stands there, never bending or walking it off. Steese gets a 29, and everyone gets very excited, until Schtitt says he was slow starting the watch. The arthritis in a thumb. Everyone but Wayne and Steese uses the reach bucket in a sort of pro forma way. 16-year-old Petropolis Khan, a.k.a. WM, for Woolly Mammoth, because he's so hairy, gets a 60 and then a 59, and then pitches forward onto the hard surface and lies very still. Tony Nwangi tells people to walk around him. The cardiovascular finale is side-to-sides, conceived by Vandermeer in the BS 60s and demonic in its simplicity. Again, split into 4s on 8 courts. For the top 8 teens, Prorector R. Dunkel at net with an armful of balls and more in a hopper beside him, hitting fungos, 1 to the forehand corner and 1 to the backhand corner, and then farther out to the forehand corner, and so on and on. Hal Incandenza is expected to at least get a racket on each ball. For Steese and Wayne, the expectations are higher. A very unpleasant drill fatigue-wise, and for Hal also ankle-wise, what with all the stopping and reversing. Hal wears 2 bandages over a left ankle he shaves way more often than his upper lip. Over the bandages goes on an air stir-up inflatable ankle brace that's very lightweight but looks a bit like a medieval torture implement. It was in a stop and reverse move much like the side-to-sides that Hal tore all the soft left ankle tissue he then owned, at 15, in his ankle at Atlanta's Easter Bowl, in the 3rd round, which he was losing anyway. Dunkel goes fairly easy on Hal, at least on the first 2 go-rounds because of the ankle. Hal's going to be seated in at least the top 4 at the Whataburger Invitational in a couple of weeks. And woe to the pro-rector who lets Hal get hurt the way Hal let some of his little buddies get hurt yesterday. What's potentially demonic about side-to-sides is that the duration of the drill and pace and angle of the fungos to be chased down from side to side are entirely at the pro-rector's discretion. Pro-rector Rick Dunkel, a former 16 doubles runner-up at Junior Wimbledon and a decent enough guy, the son of some kind of plastic packaging systems tycoon on the South Shore, tied with Thorpe for the brightest of the pro-rectors more or less by default, regarded as kind of a mystic because he refers people sometimes to Lyle and has been observed sitting at community gatherings with his eyes closed, but not sleeping. But the point is, a decent enough guy, but not much into any kind of exchange of quarter. He seems to have received instructions to put the particular hurt on Ortho Stice this time. By his third go-round, Stice is trying to weep without breath and mewing for his aunts. But anyway, everybody goes through side to sides 3 times. Even Petropolis Khan staggers through them, who, after stars, had to be sort of lugged over by Stefan Vongdegnecht and Jeff Wax with his Nikes dragging behind him, and his head swinging free on his neck, and given kind of a swing set shove to get started. Hal feels for Khan, who's not fat, but is in the shot type mold, very thick and solid, except also carrying extra weight in terms of leg and back hair, and who always tires easily no matter how hard he conditions. Khan makes it through, but stays bent over the distress bucket long after the third go-around, staring into it, and stays that way while everybody else removes more soaked bottom layers of clothing and accepts clean towels from a halfway house part-time black girl with a towel cart and pickup balls. It is 720 hours, and they are through with the active part of dawn drills. Nwangi, at the edge of the hillside, is whistling the next shift over for opening sprints. Schtitt shares more overall impressions as minimum wage aides dispense Kleenex and paper cones. Nwangi's reedy voice carries. He's telling the bees he wishes to see nothing but assholes and elbows on these sprints. It's unclear to Hal what this might connote. The A players have formed those ragged rows behind the baseline again, and Schtitt paces back and forth. Seeing sluggish drilling by sluggards. Not meaning insults, this is the fact. Motions are gone through. Barely minimal efforts. Cold, yes, the cold hands and nose with mucus. Thoughts on getting through, going in, hot showers, water, very hot, a meal. The thoughts are drifting toward the comfort of ending. Too cold to demand the total, yes? Master Chu, too cold for tennis at the high level? Yes. Chu, it does seem pretty cold out, sir. Ah. Pacing back and forth, with about faces at every 10th step, stopwatch around his neck, pipe and pouch and pointer in his hands behind his back, nodding to himself, clearly wishing he had a third hand so he could stroke his white chin, pretending to ruminate, every AM essentially the same, except when Schtitt does the females and the males get dressed down by Delint. All the older boys' eyes are glazed with repetition. Hal's tooth gives off little electric shivers with each in-breath, and he feels slightly unwell. When he moves his head slightly, the monitor glass bits glitter shifts and dances along the opposite fence in a sort of sickening way. Ah. Turns crisply toward them, looking briefly skyward. And when is hot, too pretty hot, for the total self on the court. The other hand of the spectrum, it's always something that is too. Master Incandenza, who cannot quickly get behind Lob's descent so weight can move forward into overhand. Please tell your thinking. It is always hot or cold, yes? A small smile. It's been our general observation out there, sir. So then so. Master Chu, from California's temperance regions. Chu brings down his hanky. I guess we have to learn to adjust to conditions, sir. I believe is what you're saying. A full, sharp half-turn to face the group. Is what I am not saying, young Lamont Chu, is why you cease to seem to give total effort of self, since you begin with the clipping pictures of great professional figures for your adhesive tape and walls, no? Because privileged gentlemen and boys, I am saying, is always something that is too Cold, hot, wet, and dry, very bright sun, and you see the purple dots. Very bright, hot, and you have no salt. Outside is wind, the insects which like the sweat. Inside is smell of heaters, echo being jammed in together. Tarp is over close to baseline, not enough of room. Bells inside clubs which ring the hour loudly to distract. Clunk of machines vomiting sweet cola for coins. Inside roof too low for the lap. Bad lighting, so. Or outside. The bad surface. Oh, no, look, no. Crabgrass and cracks along baseline. Who could give the total with crabgrass? Look, here is low net, high net. Opponent's relatives heckle. Opponents cheats. Linesmen in semifinals in pair or cheats. You hurt. You have the injury. Bad knee and back. Hurt groin area. From not stretching as asked. Aches of elbow, eyelash and eye, the throat is sore, a too pretty girl in audience watching. Who could play like this? Big crowd overwhelming, or too small to inspire. Always something. His turns, as he paces, are crisp and used to punctuate. Adjust. Adjust. Stay the same. No, is not stay the same. Is it cold? Is it wind? Cold and wind is the world outside, yes? On the tennis court, the player, this is not where there is cold wind. I am saying different world inside. World built inside, cold outside. World of wind breaks the wind, shelters the player, you. If you stay the same, stay inside. Pacing gradually faster, the turns becoming pirouettic. The older kids stare straight ahead. Some of the younger follow every move of the pointer with wide eyes. Trevor Axford is bent at the waist and moving his head slightly, trying to get the sweat dripping off his face to spell something out on the surface. Schtitt is silent for two fast about faces, ranging before them, tapping his jaw with the pointer. Not ever, I think, disadjusting. To what disadjusting? This world inside is the same always. If you stay there, this is what we are making, no? New type citizen, not of cold and wind outside. Citizens of this sheltering second world we are working to show you every dawn, no? To make your introduction. The big buddies translate Schtitt into accessible language for the littler kids is a big part of their assignment. Borders of court for singles, Mr. Rader, are what? 24 by 8, sir, sounding hoarse and thin. So, second world, without cold or purple dots of bright for you, is 23.8 meters. 8, I think, 0.2 meters, yes? In that world is joy because there is a shelter of something else, of purpose past sluggardly self and complaints about uncomfort. I am speaking to not just La Manchu of the temperance world. You have a chance to occur playing, no? To make for you this second world that is always the same. There is in this world you, and in the hand a tool. There is a ball. There is opponent with his tool, and always only two of you, you and this other, inside the lines with always a purpose to keep this world alive, yes? The pointer motions through all this become too orchestral and intricate to describe. This second world inside the lines, yes? Is this adjusting? This is not adjusting. This is not adjusting to ignore cold and wind and tired. Not ignoring as if is no cold, is no wind. No cold wind where you occur? No. Not adjust to conditions. Make this second world inside the world. Here, there are no conditions. Looks around. So put a lid on it. About the fucking cold, says DeLint, with his clipboard under his arm and his strangler-sized hands in his pockets, hopping a little in place. Schtitt is looking around. Like most Germans outside popular entertainment, he gets quieter when he wants to impress or menace. There are very few shrill Germans, actually. If it is hard, he says softly, hard to hear because of the rising wind, difficult for you to move between the two worlds, from cold, hot wind and sun to this place inside the lines where is always the same, he says, seeming now to study the weatherman's pointer he holds down and out with his hands. It can be arranged for you, gentlemen, not to leave ever here this world inside the lines of court. You know, can stay here until there is citizenship right here. The pointer is pointed at the spots they're standing, at breathing and blotting their faces and blowing their noses. Can today put up testar lung for the world's shelter, sleep bags, meals brought to you, never across the lines, never leave the court, study here, a bucket for hygienic needs, at gymnasium, Kaiser Lautern, where I am privileged boy who whining about cold wind, we live inside tennis court for months to learn to live inside. Very lucky days when they bring us meals. Not possible to cross a line for months of living. Left-hander Brian Van Vleck picks a bad moment to break wind. Schtitt shrugs, half turning away from them to look off somewhere. Or else leave here into large external world where is cold and pain without purpose or tool, eyelash and eye and pretty girl, not worry any more about how to occur. Looks around. No one is a prisoner here. Who would like to escape into large world? Master Sweeney? Little eyes down. Mr. Coyle, with always too cold to give total? Coyle studies the vasculature on the side of his elbow with deep interest as he shakes his head. John Wayne is joggling his head around like a Raggedy Andy head, stretching out the neck hardware. John Wayne is notoriously tight and can't touch anything below the knee with straight legs during stretches. Mr. Peter Beak, with always the weeping to home on the telephone? The 12-year-old says, Not me, sir, several times. Hal very subtly shoots in a small plug of Kodiak. Aubrey DeLint has his arms crossed over the clipboard and is looking around beadily like a crow. Hal Incandenza has an almost obsessive dislike for DeLint, whom he tells Mario he sometimes cannot quite believe is even real, and tries to get to the side of to see whether DeLint has a true Z coordinate or is just a cutout or projection. The kids of the next shift are walking downhill and sprinting back up and walking down, warrior whooping without conviction. The other male pro-rectors are drinking cones of Gatorade. Clustered in the little pavilion, feet up on patio chairs, Dunkel's and Watson's eyes closed. Neil Hartigan, in his traditional Tahitian shirt and Gauguin motif sweater, has to stay sitting down to fit under the Gatorade awning. Simple, Schtitt shrugs, so that the upraised pointer seems to stab at the sky. Heat, he suggests, move, travel lightly, occur, be here, not in bed or shower or over bacon steam. In the mind, be here, in total, in nothing else. Learn, try, drink your green juice, perform the butterfly exercises on all 8 of these courts, please, to warm down. Mr. DeLint, please to bring them back down. Make sure of stretching the groins. Gentlemen, hit tennis balls, fire at your will, use a head, you are not arms. Arm in the real tennis is like wheels of vehicles, not engine. Legs not either. Where is where you apply for citizenship? In second world, Mr. Consciousness of ankle in Candenza, a revenant. Hal can lean out and spit in a way that isn't insolent. Head, sir. Excuse? The human head, sir, if I got your thrust. Where I'm going to occur as a player. The game's two heads, one world, sir. Schtitt sweeps the pointer in an ironic morendo arc and laughs aloud. Play.